Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Check out my new jerseys, everyone.
What?
Boundary stones, everyone.
Why is Ted Pee Wee Herman
I
doing
don't
a
know.
voice now?
I don't know. It's not for sale, Francis. Let's see. What's up, everybody? How are
going
you
on?
today? I'm confused. So is everyone else. I went out to practice today. Saw the portion they allowed me to watch.
Yeah.
It's not much. And I don't think this is a new one. I've never encountered more people who are around it every day, that cover it every day, that know all the things that we all know every day, have different opinions about what happened yesterday.
Okay.
So now that we've had 24 hours, how's it sunk in for you that we traded both of them?
Oh, I said on Monday I wanted them both gone. This was great for me. Best case scenario for me.
There's a part of me that goes, well, if I knew they were trading Chase, there's part of me that wanted them to keep Montez.
They are sitting at the 35th pick for Montez Sweat right now. That is a first-round talent.
You would do no better than that in the offseason. Like, if you tagged and traded them, you're either re-signing them. You would know. So, in their defense, they would do no better than that.
Yes.
Like, if you tagged him, no one's giving you 2 first-round picks for him. So it's not happening.
Not to mention, if the Bears were dangling, let's say the position stays the same, just for this exercise. Let's say it stays at pick 35. I bet you Washington might have had to sweeten the pot a little bit to get the 35th pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they would have had to trade Sweat and a 5th
mm-hmm.
and give something back or something like that.
Maybe.
Instead, they're getting straight up a first-round talent for an expiring contract. I am all in on that. All in on that.
All right. So I've heard from people who thought they shouldn't have traded either of them, to which I would say to you people, you don't pay attention.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I can't even entertain this with you. If this was baseball, I'd hear you out.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
This is a cap. And if they did keep both of them and re-sign them at market value, and let's just guess it's between 20 and 25 million for both, if not more, because of Chase Young is his name.
The projection of Chase Young I saw on one of the cap websites was like 17 million right now. And I actually said what you just said. He probably gets 20 because his name is Chase Young.
Probably.
Right.
Let's see what happens here.
Sweat's projection was 25, by the way.
This is going to be very telling for him. Going to a place where he's playing on a very good team. There's going to be no excuse of teammates around him, not unlike it was here, at least with the defensive line. And, oh, by the way, they're not signing him long term.
Right.
They rented him.
Pure rental. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's why they're literally flipping the third-round pick and getting a third once he walks. I mean,
right. They're like, here, go ahead.
For them, they gave up a higher pick.
Yes.
It's essentially moving down to get Chase Young for 9 games.
For 9 games.
And a playoff run.
Correct.
One postseason run.
So, and if Chase does not have a good second half of the season, that's not going to help him on the open market.
Right.
All right, so let's just say that, okay, so for the people, I don't know why I'm entertaining this, the people who think they should have kept both of them, all right, let's just say that the projection's right and it's around 20 million, right? And Montez is going to get a market deal, probably closer to 25, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe even a little higher. Depends on like what his market looks like. But I think the Bears probably can get something done now. Either way, that would be next year on their cap $100 million for the defensive line.
Yep.
The cap's about 220. Now, they do have a quarterback who makes no money. That's the good news.
Sure.
We're running out of that cap space we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Remember that part? That's gone. That's eliminated. It's gone.
Sure.
Now, you could restructure some of these people, I suppose. Not pain. It just happened. Well, and I suppose you could restructure Terry, I suppose. You could go relatively cheap on other positions again. I don't know. Considering, well, I don't know. We're talking about all of this because this group isn't winning.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they were the 85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens,
right.
I'd be like, yeah, you know what? They're dominant. Let's do it.
Right.
No.
They're not.
They're
actually the second worst scoring defense in the league this year.
Yeah.
And you want to reward them. I don't know why. All right. So now that we're here, I think largely anybody who wants to argue they shouldn't have traded either one of them is living in another era. Okay?
Right.
That was never possible. Now, I will have the nuanced argument of should they have picked up Chase's fifth-year option to not be in this position?
Of course.
I would have that conversation with you, and I will reiterate what I said yesterday and how I felt about it in the spring. I thought it was worth the bet to pick it up. And if it blew up in their face, it blew up in their face because Chase isn't healthy enough to play at the level they need him to. But as it turned out, hindsight shows they probably should have done it just to not be in this position, okay? Not to be in, because it would have given them more leverage on the market with Sweat if they wanted to trade him, more leverage on the market with Chase if they wanted to trade him, and left them the opportunity to think about the future with both of them without having to make a decision now. I'll hear that part out. But once that decision was made and we're here now, the idea, anybody arguing they should have kept both of them and not traded either one of them isn't paying attention whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. To many different things.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk to the other people who wanted to hear an outcome that included one or the other staying.
Not both.
Not both.
Yeah.
That's a better argument to have.
I'll hear you.
I'll hear it.
Yeah.
So Mitch Tischler, who I like a lot, said this to me. I hope he doesn't mind. He's probably said it somewhere else. He probably doesn't mind. And I'll just repeat it here because I'd like to have the discussion about it. I thought it was interesting. He said that he thought that they should have kept Montez.
Uh-huh.
I agree with this. I know nobody wants to hear this too. Well, no, actually, I think our fan base knows. Of the two, I'm keeping Montez.
Sure.
It's all because of his health.
Well, and because of the coaching staff, period. They've never had a bad thing to say about Montez.
No.
Jack just said he needs to finish more, and that was a valid criticism. And
it really was like, like Duran did, if you finish, you get numbers, we'll pay you.
Right. Exactly.
He wasn't it wasn't a referendum. It was just, we think you play great. We think you'd play better if you had 15 sacks.
That's right. And
that's all.
We've known this basically since year 2. They have had concerns about Chase Young's maturity and being a leader, and then he got hurt.
I'm going to get into that stuff in a minute. Right. It was kind of the point of one of the things I want to talk about that I'm actually not happy about. But go ahead.
But either way, what I'm getting at here is this coaching staff has never hid who they've liked and not liked by what their actions actually are.
Right.
And Ron talking about maturity, and then when Chase was filming commercials after winning Rookie of the Year, stuff like that, they were clearly not happy with
I
his
talked
growth.
about this his second year. I'm like, why aren't you here in the spring?
Right.
You're a leader. Yeah. I get you don't have to be here. The coaching staff is asking you to be here, and you're not showing up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And they're teaching you techniques at this other place that they don't want you to implement in the games.
That's right. Yes. We talked about it yesterday. He's standing up, and I've never seen any defensive end on our team stand up in the last 4 years.
Because he had to.
Right.
Because he had to.
Right.
He had to take, in my opinion, some load off of his body.
Yeah.
And it's a harder, when you do that jump off, you're going to take more hits.
Right.
I think there's an injury part of this that ought to be plain as day to anybody, right? So, all right. So Mitch's idea was, well, what if you moved either John or Duran and re-signed Sweat so that you have balance on your line?
Yeah.
He's arguing where I was. I think Chase Young needed to be dealt.
Right.
But Montez is the one, in my opinion, that's arguable because, one, he is a very good player. He has been consistent. He hasn't been great. Do you pay him the amount of money on the open market that you're going to have to pay him because he is very good and somebody is going to pay him to do that? So his argument was, and I hope he doesn't mind that I share this, but I don't think he was being private about it.
Yeah.
He was like, if someone came along with a deal that was high picks for John or Duran, I would have thought about that for the sole purpose of, you now have balance. You have a high-paid defensive tackle and a high-paid defensive end, and you fill in the other two spots with the cheaper alternatives. And you have James Smith-Williams or Tuhill, Ridgeway or Mathis, but you fill in that way, and it's a balanced thing. And I said, I'll hear you on that, right? And I don't think that that's a terrible idea, but I would say this. Do you think Montez Sweat is worth market value, $25+ million a year? Nobody does who watches it.
I've been saying no to that.
He's a very, very good player, not a great one, right? Very, very good, not a great one. So I don't think you pay him like Bosa.
Yep. I
think you have to, but all it takes is one person on the open market to hand him that, and that's where he's at, right? So let's just say you went through with that plan because I'm sure someone did offer them something for John Allen. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same offer for Montez Sweat, probably. I don't think the team had any interest in doing anything like that, but okay, let's just say they did, and they decided that's not a bad idea, let's do this. If your argument is John's not living up to the salary that he's making, because that's part of this, then I would go, Okay, aren't you going to have the same complaint about Montez Sweat next year when he has 9 sacks?
Right.
And he's making $26 million a year?
Yep, right.
So if your argument is John's not living up to the number this year, but what proof do you have that there's an ascension for Montez when you pay him like a top-tier defensive end? I think you'll get the same player, a very good player, very coachable player, a guy everybody likes, a really good end, but not a great one.
Yep.
Name the plays that he turned a game upside down. I can name one. Thanksgiving, 3 years ago.
That was it, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
He has good numbers. He's a very good player. He plays way more within the scheme than the other guy did, which I'll get to in a moment. But he's not flipping games upside down. So now you have to make a choice. And what they were offered for him was they didn't give him away.
Right.
They got a very high second round pick. I mean, unless somehow Chicago goes on some kind of crazy run, which doesn't appear to be in the making, but they're probably going to get a top 40 pick, if better than that.
Yep.
Top 35 pick, maybe. Depends on what their record is. And I don't take an issue with that because I have a hard time paying him that market value. So I'll hear out arguments to keep Montez. I won't hear any to keep Chase Young at this point. And I know maybe for some of you that's hard to hear, but I don't think that there was a pathway to him getting a long-term deal here. So I'll go back to, this is why I wanted them to pick up his 5th-year option so we didn't have to make this decision right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what happened this year. But considering the decision was made, and this is where we are, and now having seen what I've seen up to this point and know what I know, I think there was not a pathway to a long-term deal for him. So I will hear an argument about whether Sweat should be here or not, because I think there's valid cases to be made on both sides about it. But I don't feel like they did the wrong thing yesterday when it comes to Chase Young. I think they did the right thing. It's hard to say it. It's hard to believe it. I wished things were different with him. I wished he was the generational player that I thought we had when we drafted him. I wanted him to be that. This is not about his character. I think he's a very good guy. I like his family. I like him. I know that he's a good teammate. I know that he's someone that the team really liked and is missed today, big time. But this is a performance game. He needs to be paid commensurate to his talent and his draft stock, his name, his stardom, and his ability, and they don't add up to that number.
Yeah.
And because of that, regardless of whether Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio are the coaches or not, I don't think there was a pathway to him to be here at that number. At a reasonable number, I wouldn't mind kicking the can down the road and letting whoever is making these decisions think about it in the offseason. But because they put themselves in this position, which is a whole other thing to talk about, that they
Correct.
put themselves in this position, then I think they did the right thing with him. And that's where I've landed on it today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all does boil down to the 5th-year option thing was the wrong decision. And honestly, I actually am more irked now thinking about it that why didn't you just pick it up and let the next owner decide, whoever
This
that was.
is what I've said about it at the time.
Right. It reminds me of...
Like, yeah, if he didn't come back and look like himself, then it's a bad bet and it looks like a bad decision.
Right.
You were out anyway.
Yeah, right, exactly. And
They'll blame it on you.
Yes, right. So that's the first thing, the first half of unpacking it. The other one is, it is not like Montez Sweat was moved for a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick.
Correct.
You are going to get a 1st-round talent for him. I'm all about that life. Like, they got a sweetheart deal from the Bears. And then did you see the report from the Bears?
No.
Did you see what Graziano said?
No.
They're going to make an attempt to re-sign him. They don't even have a plan or a deal in place.
Oh, they don't.
So it's like
they're going to have to give him the money.
The Bears,
so
the Bears were their Huckleberry is what I'm getting at here.
Well, this is what happened with the Ravens with Roquan last year.
Yeah.
Roquan, they didn't do it immediately.
Yeah.
And Roquan went, I know what you gave up to get me, guy.
Right, exactly.
You don't think I have you?
Right.
And so,
but the Bears are also the same.
You're going to look stupid if you don't give me what I want. He didn't even have an agent.
Right.
And he walked in and he went, what's the highest paid linebacker? I'll take that.
Right.
And they did it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what's going to happen with Montez. He's going to get a market deal. He can't ask for both.
This is also the same team that traded a 2nd for Chase Claypool last year.
Trust me. Who's he got? Clutch Sports, right?
Yeah.
Those guys, they know what they're doing. They're gonna be like, we know what you traded for him.
Right.
We know you can't let him walk.
Exactly.
So what's it gonna be, guys? So he's gonna get probably more. He's gonna get a premium because they're gonna look stupid if he walks. They're a bad team who gave up a high 2nd-round pick. They can't walk.
Yeah.
They can't let him walk.
It was a 2-parter. Jeremy Fowler said the Bears offered to extend cornerback Jalen Johnson, quote, was considered pretty low, so they didn't even try to give him a market deal.
Kurt.
And then for Graziano, it says, quote, the Bears will at least make an effort to sign Montez Sweat.
Dude,
long term.
you'll get fired for trading a high second-round pick for somebody who's there for 8 games on a team that's 2-6.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So they have to sign him, which means he and his agent are in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Come at me with the right deal, or I'll walk, and you're going to look really dumb.
Or you have to franchise me.
Yeah.
Then I'd make $25 million.
Yeah.
Whatever that number is.
Okay. So then there is the part that I really want to get to, which is I've said what I want to say about Chase in general.
Yeah.
I think we all know, because we've followed his career very closely here, the maturity thing was about him. They were not particularly pleased at him not showing up in off seasons and it was his right to go work out wherever he wanted to work out. It wasn't that he was out of shape. It wasn't anything like that. He chose to be other places. Team wasn't happy about that, especially after the injury. They wanted him around a lot more because they wanted to monitor what he was doing, and they had no problem with him going to see his doctors and his specialists to get himself healthy. And I think every player should do that for their own peace of mind, especially when they're coming off, not just to take face value what the team doctors are saying, but to have second opinions in their own doctors. I think they were all for that, but they wanted him there rehabbing.
Right.
Because he's too important to them. I mean, the point was all along, all these things were being said about him because he was too important to them.
Right, because he's the franchise. He was the face of the franchise material. I'm not saying he was the face of the franchise, but they wanted him treated like that.
This organization succeeds if he succeeds.
Right.
The fact that he was traded yesterday, a year short of the maturation of what would be his rookie contract, is an organizational failure. It's a failure, unfortunately, on his side. It's a failure of this coaching staff. It's a failure of the front. It's a failure of everybody. And part of it is, I'll be fair to them, that injury that he had was really bad. So half of his tenure here was taken up by a very tough injury that he had to try to overcome. So none of that's anybody's fault. Like, that just happened. But the fact that we are here now, I mean, it is a failure that, like, we weren't able to figure it out with him. That said, all of the things about his, like, what people said on the way out the door, what Mike Silver tweeted yesterday.
The smear campaign on the way out. Yeah.
Yes.
Like hours after it happened.
I've been trying to figure out a way to say this, and I can say it with not getting in trouble with the FCC and not having you dump this. I have no other way of saying this to whoever is telling Mike Silver, or Ben had a story, had a team source that says addition by subtraction.
Yep.
Shut the F up. Like, what in the world? Who does that serve? Mm-hmm. Whose team are you on?
Right.
Like, and plus, like, I want to go back to something I said earlier. Nobody thinks he's a bad guy. Nobody is questioning his character.
Right.
He's not a bad teammate.
Never got in trouble.
He's not a cancer in the locker room. He's extremely well liked. His teammates really, really like him. Trust me, I'm not just saying that. I've seen it before when guys are in the locker room and they're like, that dude's a you-know-what.
Right.
Right? So, you know what? Whoever is saying that on the way out the door, why are you saying that? Because you're trying to defend why the team did what they did? We all know why you did what you did. We are characterizing it correctly. I understand that I don't totally agree with the asset management of having them both on an expiring contract at the same time. And I think you could have a nuanced conversation about construction of your roster and asset management and cap when you do something like that. But once you made that decision, you put yourself here, don't character assassinate this guy.
Yep.
Because he doesn't deserve that. That's not who he is. That's not what he's been about. If he was a POS, I would say it in a nice diplomatic way. He's not. He never was that. He was a good representative of the organization. He didn't do everything they wanted him to do, but he wasn't a bad representative of the organization. Yeah. He was a good representative of the organization. He was a very good player. He unfortunately was never a great player, except for maybe a short period of time in his rookie year.
Sure.
That's unfortunate that it worked out that way. You know what? A lot of first-round picks don't pan out to be all-time greats. This was one that I had hoped would be in this uniform. It didn't work out that way. Stop saying these disparaging things about him on the way out the door. It's too much. It's over the top. And you're the team that hasn't played in a playoff game in a very long time. Yeah. And you're justifying your actions to everybody else, trading away a face of the franchise. Stop talking about things like this. Just wish him luck in the best of his career, because he deserves that. That's it. That's what he deserves. That's the way I feel about it. He deserves that. I'm sorry it didn't work out here. I think the team did the right thing for a variety of reasons, most of which I can talk about, and some I can't, frankly. And I think they did the right thing here. But I also know he's a good guy. And I also know he's a good player. And I hope he has a very nice career from here. Stop saying things like that about him.
Yeah, I didn't understand that one at all, because it also, if you're going that route, you're also saying you're the guy that drafted him. So you're saying you made the wrong decision. You're admitting you made the wrong decision.
Well, I mean, I don't know who said these things. I'm not attributing them to anybody.
It still said team
Considering
source, though.
Mike Silver wrote it.
Yeah. It's team.
I was a little put off, thinking who might have said that. Yeah. But I don't know who did, because he worked for the organization for a short period of time. It could be anybody in the building that he has a contact with.
Right, but at the same time,
but I believe it's somebody in that building. To which I want to say back to him, because I don't do it, pal, and I'm just a freelance employee here. I don't make statements like that. There are things that stay in house, buddy. Yeah, right, okay, right. And he's out the door, and you're trying to justify why you traded him.
Yeah.
No.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to put up with that, and I hope other people in the building don't put up with that. That ain't what we're about here.
And on top of all of that, what does that do for anybody? Now players that see the current people that are in this organization, if I don't perform, then on the way back, I'm going to get crapped on,
Right.
Like it does nobody any favors if you're doing that. And like you said, too, Chase Young didn't disparage the organization on the way out. He didn't have some tweet of trade me. He didn't have these outbursts or whatever. He didn't even have an outburst like John Allen.
No.
I'm 100% with you. There are players that do deserve some of that treatment on the way out, but most of the time you don't do it anyways, because you don't want to seem petty. You don't want to be that organization. You want to be an upstanding franchise. I'm with you. There was no reason for all of that to come out last night, where it was this guy's from the area too. There's no reason.
He's a well-liked guy.
There's no reason to go that route with Chase.
At all.
Yeah.
At all. And I'm not just covering for him. The guy's a good guy. Yeah. He's not a bad person. His teammates love him. Yeah, there was nothing like that. There was no chemistry problem or locker room cancer. Right. We got to get this addition by subtraction. That sounds like he's a locker room cancer. He's the opposite of it.
Yeah. And not
Don't
only that,
say something like that. That's not even true about him.
One of his most iconic moments was going to meet Heineke in the end zone in that playoff game, being a good teammett. That was one of the most gifable moments they've had.
Trust me on this. Neither one of those guys were disliked. They were very well liked. In every team, they've got their things, and everybody's got their cliques or their whatever. And it was, I felt this way for a long time that, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but is John best friends with those two? It doesn't seem like it was ever the case, And I think some of the issues with the defensive line were they were never overly coordinated with one another. Whose fault is that? Is it Chase's fault? Is it Montez's fault? Is it John's fault? Is it Jack's fault? Is it the defensive line coach's fault? Remember, they had to fire the D-line coach because those guys wouldn't play for the dude.
That's right. Yep. Right.
So this has been going on for a few years. All of them collectively. It's not one guy. It's not. And with Chase, we've been saying this about him for a while. If they had left this statement at, listen, he's been an undisciplined player, and it's been very difficult for us to do the things we want to do because he often is going rogue on the field, right?
Right.
That's not an untrue statement. I don't think it needed to be said, right? And it's not like the 49ers or any other team doesn't know that watches film. Of course they do. But to the fans, you don't need to say something like that. You don't need to. But if they had said that, period, I don't think I'd be upset about it, because it is true. If you just watch film, you'd see it, right? But then to go on and say addition by subtraction, you're insinuating the guy was a bad influence on other people, and I'm not here for that.
Yep, right.
I'm not. He's not the reason why their defense is ranked 31st in the league.
Yeah, of course not.
He is not. Has he been the answer for them? Unfortunately, no. He's part of the problem.
Yep.
But I'm not going to sit here and hear that this guy is the reason why. And so I was really upset when I saw this, because I'm sitting there going guys, one, your record is what it is. So to sit there and say things like that and not think that people are going to be oh yeah, you guys know what you're talking about.
Right. Right.
One,
exactly.
And that's a reasonable reaction from anybody who sees this and goes, you traded away this person who they're not paying that close attention and don't realize all the things we're talking about. They just think they just traded off a stud player, right? And maybe they did. It's a possibility.
Sure.
They're going to read this and go, you guys just traded him off at 24 and you're telling us how you're right?
Yeah, right.
And your record, by the way, is 3-5, and you've never been over 500. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting here telling us how you're right. from a PR perspective, I'm reading this going, I think it's best to put your head down, wish him the best of luck. You know what you know.
Yep.
You know the reasons why you did it. And largely the people who are covering it day to day, whether they're someone like me who literally works for the organization at times, and others who, follow it closely, but I think are fair about it,
Sure.
are going to tell your story correctly. This is a tough day to say goodbye to someone like that. But at the same time, we know why. The Sweat one's a little different to me. I'll hear an argument either way about it. Should we have retained him? I'll hear an argument for that. Did they do well in a trade? Yes. Should they have traded him at all? I'm not sure.
Yeah, right.
Knowing that Chase is gone, I don't know. But this whole trashing him in any way on the way out the door, I thought was off, wrong, unseemly, and to me, tone deaf.
Yep.
Plus, you know what? Good teams make decisions like this all the time. Like the Patriots famously for a long time, like guys like Chandler Jones go, or Logan Mankins go, Richard Seymour go, like really good players that ended up going somewhere else. They never trashed them on the way out the door.
That's right. That's right.
And he didn't deserve it, in my opinion. Did he live up to his potential? No. Is that all on him? Maybe, maybe not. He also didn't become the player you wanted him to become. Is that because you couldn't get through to him?
Right.
This is all on him? No, I don't want to hear it. Chase, I wish you the best in San Francisco. I wish it worked out differently here. I don't think this way about you. I wish it was different, and I had hoped you were going to be here for a long time and put your name in the Ring of Honor. It didn't work out that way, period. All right, I want to ask you a tough question next.
Let's do it.
Toughest trade we've had in recent years. They just traded Chase Young yesterday. And we've had some very prominent other players leave here in recent years, including my Bradley, Michael. My Bradley was traded.
That's the one I don't care about.
Be right back. Very much Joey Spin, 630 Sports Capital. All right. Yesterday was tough to see. I'm not surprised Chase Young was traded, but it's in year 4. It's one of those like, the day they drafted him, if I told you
Yep.
that this is how it's going to go and that he's not even going to get to the end of his rookie contract and we're going to trade him, I never would have believed it. But we are.
And I know you're about to ask me the question. Here's the thing with him, though. The trajectory of him being traded wasn't shocking, though. Like, in terms of he had a good first year, then got a major injury, then wonky coming back. Then throughout that whole time, we know the coaching staff and him were at odds. Then we get to this year where he finally comes back. In a contract year, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Like, it wasn't steamrolling, but it was rolling towards being traded. It wasn't like
it
this
was right there.
Shocking thing.
Yeah,
that came out.
I still believe that they should have picked up the 5th-year option just to control the decision, the timing of the decision as Montez was coming up.
Sure,
and
right.
that would have left them a different leverage point.
Yes.
I still think they got the most they would have gotten for Montez Sweat either way. It almost doesn't. So they may say 6 and 1, half a dozen the other. What's the difference? Like if we were to trade Montez Sweat at this point, which I don't think was their intention initially. It's. I think that they were trying to move Chase Young and that they were going to make a decision about Montez Sweat. And what's interesting is I wonder if they had traded Chase first.
Yeah, right.
If they would have rethought it. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Or if he would have ended up in Atlanta, where I think they were going to get him. Right. And sounded like they were going to just sign him to a extension like immediately.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So anyway, all right. So that happened, though. Both of them happened yesterday. It's tough to believe.
Yeah.
I am partially, we haven't had this conversation yet, but I'm partially relieved that we're done talking about the 4 first-round picks on the defensive line because it's been 4 years of them not living up to the potential in a lot of ways.
That's what I was getting at on Monday. I was like, I'm kind of done having this being the storyline every single year.
It's every year.
And it's been so inconsistent. I'm kind of over
inconsistent.
it.
It's a good word for it.
Yeah. And then
I also think the story of this year is the 2 guys in the interior have not played in the way that they have in the past either. So it's easy to blame Montez and Chase. They're the ones with the contract up. The other 2 guys are paid, and they're not having Pro Bowl years right now.
Correct. John Allen's he was the in the NFL top 100 ranked at 52. If he's the 52nd ranked best player in the league, we need more from that. If that's who he's supposed to be.
I agree. All right, so it was a tough day. I mean, either way, not that I was surprised about what happened, and I think we all knew that if the season went like this, that this is what was going to happen. So it's not like this is out of the blue or anything like that, but it still sucks. I mean, it does signal, change. a failure on some level. Like it sucks. And they're major players that were here, especially Chase Young when he represented. We've had a lot of these days in recent years with all of our teams. Like we had it with the Wizards. Laugh all you want. I mean, they've had to trade 2 franchise players away. And one obviously for injury reasons, but like the other one because he was getting paid too much and they couldn't win.
Right.
And the Nationals have seen a lot of stars go. So what's the worst one, or what's the toughest one? I mean, worst is not the right word. What's the toughest one? I already know mine is easy, but I think actually mine's a kind of half tie.
You go first then.
Juan Soto's the toughest one to me.
All right, so I will agree with you.
Juan Soto's the toughest one to me because there's 3 postseason runs left in him. And I just felt like that one turned up to 11 and when it didn't need to.
Yeah. So
like with Chase, at least his contract was up. You had to make a decision. With Juan Soto, his contract was not up and and still isn't even up.
So with Soto,
like, here we are 2 years later, and his contract's still not up.
So with Soto, I agree with you. That one also was the ugliest one in recent memory of all the teams.
Yeah, that spun out of control. I remember saying, guys, hit the brakes here. Yeah, like you guys were letting this spin out of control.
They were playing, I believe it was the Saturday before the All-Star break, and the first report came out. And then they went on the All-Star break, and he's in the home run derby. And all of a sudden, that's the storyline. And he then wins the home run derby. And then Buster Olney has to ask him about it. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it was...
That press conference before the home run derby was embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible for him. Like, this is a huge honor. And he's sitting there. The whole thing got railroaded by trade rumors. And I'm like, is this your guy or not?
Yeah. And so I will still stand by this day. Like, I don't... If you need to restock your farm system, which is what they did, I don't mind that you make that call. You better be right when you make that call, and that still remains to be seen, right? We don't know if any of those players are going to work out. But it was the way that you took your young superstar that won you a championship, by the way. Like, I feel like that's worth mentioning here. He was one of the best players when they won the World Series, and you kind of dragged him through the mud and through a really difficult situation where you didn't have to. If you came out and said, we're thinking about trading him, or yes, we're fielding calls, that's tough to swallow. But then when the whole entire national media is talking about you trading your superstar that already won a ring with you, that was really tough to stomach as a fan. Because like I said, I can hear the argument of, we need to trade him to restock the farm system. Fine, you better be right. But the way they went about it, and then you had to go back and forth with Boris, Boris is a masterclass of making you look like an idiot because he knows how this stuff works.
Yeah.
Like, that was the ugliest one because
I think they got offended because they offered him a lot of money. He didn't take it immediately, and they got offended by it. And I've said this many times, if I were in the Lerner shoes, I would be offended by that too.
Sure.
That if someone offered me $400 million, I would be an idiot to turn it down, or at least on some level be not grateful for that. Like it's generational wealth, however you want to look at it. And the idea of turning that down, to me, even if he ends up being right and gets more somehow, it still is offensive.
Correct.
It is offensive.
Right.
So like I hear it from their point of view, but they also didn't have to ramp it up like that.
Correct. Yeah,
I think they could have calmed themselves down and been like, let it go another year. Just we could talk, like, he's on our team. He's not going anywhere. He's not asking to leave.
Yes, correct. It escalated quickly. And like I said, the guy was a champion with you. It wasn't like we can mention Brad in a minute here, but Brad didn't win anything here. Brad didn't win a championship. He never had an iconic moment in the playoffs. Soto had multiple moments in that playoff run, was doing the shuffle, and won a ring with you. Like, I don't know. It was the first time, because we just haven't won here in a while, where it not only escalated, it escalated with somebody that's a champion that should go into your Ring of Fame. That we all kind of envisioned of, hey, Zim's retired. You're going to be the next face of the franchise. And it just ramped up really fast in a really ugly way. So I think you and I like, that's mine hands down. That's the worst one.
To me, it was the hardest one. And I went on for, it must have been a month going, guys, don't let this happen. Almost trying to be like I want to be an arbitrator here. Guys, I see what's happening.
There was
it's a bad idea for everybody.
There's an ownership factor
down.
too, remember?
Yeah.
Remember they were supposedly going to sell the team, and we were arguing, hey, let the next owner make the call.
Let the next owner make that call.
Now they still own the team, though.
He's under contract for 2 more years. What's the rush? What's the rush?
Right.
And then I'm like, now I got to trade this guy to clean up the mess you made?
Sure.
That's ridiculous too.
Well, like I said, I'll hear that argument. If you needed to trade him to do it, you better be right. But it was the way it escalated where I was just,
right.
I think
and,
it was uncomfortable.
as time goes on here, I don't know that this is looking very good. I mean, it's not like the returns have gotten them people that are clearly going to make them a contender anytime soon.
Sure.
Like, that's why I've been like, that's the other hard part for me. I'm like, I'm willing to hear out the rebuild and why you did it. I still don't agree with all of it. I think it sucks, and I don't want to take someone like that away from my kid. That's his childhood. He gets to watch this guy play for 10 years here. I mean, it sucks that he's okay. I remember your argument was they're going to suck with him or without him. I would rather suck with him.
That's fair.
I would.
That's
if
fair.
you're going to get 3 studs for him, and we're going to turn out to have this crazy Braves team in about 3 years, all right, but I haven't seen that yet.
Correct.
And that's making it worse to me. Sure. That's making it worse.
Sure.
The close second to me is the Scherzer-Turner trade, but only because Turner was in it.
Yeah.
I had no problem with them trading Max Scherzer. It was they weren't going to re-sign him.
Yeah, right.
And he was at the age, and look at him now. I mean, the guy's like, just a flesh wound.
They
you just
made the
won't.
right call, yeah.
Yeah. He's a Monty Python skit at this point.
Right,
like
exactly.
you just like, I'm not dead yet. Just like, yes, you are. No, I'm not.
Whack.
It's just, it's like,
Put him on the board.
Yes. Like, so I totally got that. It's when they put Turner in it that I went, what? Like,
So
you didn't have to do that. Like, that was the one. Montez Sweat and Chase Young being traded yesterday. I'm not surprised it happened. Soto getting traded, we weren't surprised by the time it happened. It just felt so unnecessary to do it.
It happened fast.
Turner, it seemed like, was like, Ed will just throw in an all-star in the prime of his career because we want to curt him and not pay him anything. And I'm like, what's that?
So not unlike how you've said, the Soto returns haven't really come to fruition. With the Turner-Scherzer trade, I think it is arguable the Nats did make the right call of not re-signing Turner. I'm with you. The shock was there with Turner. But
that was the wrong trade to me, is what it was. That was the wrong
more.
trade.
In hindsight,
they should have gotten more for him.
They should have gotten more. But
the Scherzer deal, I'm like, we'll get what we get here. He's an older pitcher, maybe rental for them. We'll see what we get. Turner is going to sign a crazy deal with somebody, and even if you and I agree that maybe he shouldn't get it, we can have an argument about that, whether he should get it or not. He's an extremely valuable young player in the prime of his career.
So with Turner, I will say this, though, not unlike with Soto, how you said, it hasn't aged well so far. Like, they have not gotten the studs. We haven't seen that come to fruition at all. Right? With Turner, though, I look at his year in Philadelphia and go, maybe they did make the right call, because outside of that 6 weeks to end the season,
I still would say the return wasn't good. Even we can look at it now and go, well, they paid for him, and his first season there wasn't very good, and it's not going to get better. It's not going to get considerably better, especially on the second half of it for sure. I would still argue, though, that at the time when you're trading someone of that level, the return needs to be pretty hefty.
I'd agree. I think I'll agree to disagree here. Like, I agree that they didn't get enough for him, but I do agree with the decision to walk away from him, essentially, because clearly they even kind of knew this guy's based on all speed. Kind of know when you get older, that's not going to happen. And then look at Philly. He had a great end to the season where the city seemingly picked him up, but then in the playoffs, he didn't do jack in their deciding series against the Diamondbacks. So I look at it as they made the right call of walking away from him, but I agree with you. They needed to get more from him because Josiah, they did get a starting catcher out of it, but Josiah Gray hasn't been amazing.
They got
afterwards.
A starting catcher. They've done a good deal with him. This starting catcher doesn't seem like he's going to be all world.
Correct.
But he's a good player.
Right.
Correct. Right, he's a good player. Josiah Gray is not an ace.
No, not at all.
It looks like he's going to be a reliable rotation pitcher. Sure.
Like a three pitcher at best.
That's what they got for Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. One's a Hall of Famer. One was tracking towards it.
Right.
And the latter was in the prime of his career. And I get it. You didn't want to pay him whatever it was going to take to keep him, but that's why you trade him and get a crazy return. And they didn't get that.
Yeah, once again, it does.
If Josiah Gray turned out to be a number one ace, it'd be hard for me to argue they didn't do the right thing.
Of course.
That's not what happened here.
With Turner, too, I always felt this way as well, where Rizzo, I get it, kind of works in the shadows a lot of the time, but then when they didn't kind of advertise that Turner was available, that's where the mistake was for me, too. Because remember, we didn't know about that until like the afternoon of. Remember, it was Rosenthal and all of the reporters, the big reporters going, whoa, looks like the Padres could make a play for Turner because they want to bring him back because that's where he was drafted originally.
Yeah.
they didn't let the fever pitch get to a point where all of a sudden you have teams bidding to get his services. That's what irked me more. And you kind of let the Dodgers facilitate a deal where they gave you 2 starting caliber players, but I would have liked to see another franchise go, oh, we really want that guy. Here's the farm for him. Moving the farm doesn't happen much anymore, but they could have gotten a little more from another franchise is what I'm getting at.
I think so. Which was the press conference where Rizzo showed up with his ring on? Was it Soto or the Turner one? It was one of them. He showed up to one of those.
I want to say it was the Soto one afterwards.
That's
he pointed to it and said, I'm trying to get us another one of these. And that was
I got put off by that. I remember sitting there going, you just traded away this guy.
Better than some executives that are saying, send me my ring. At least he's wearing his ring.
I agree, but it felt really off. It was, I know what I'm doing. You don't.
Yeah.
Stop criticizing me. It was a little Dabo. It was a little Dabo.
To be fair,
I'm going to play the Dabo call later, and I want a Mystery Science Theater. It was a little Dabo of, you guys never had a baseball ring in your lifetime. Here it is, and that's why I traded this guy. Who are you, schmuck, to sit here and criticize me for trading this guy? And I was a little put off by it, going, your team's not good by your own making and design.
That's who Rizzo's always been, though.
I know, but the team's in the state that it's in because of your work, guy.
Right.
So I love you got the ring. I'll love you for it forever. You're gonna throw it in my face when the team's a mess? Okay. Go ahead.
I don't have a big problem with that. That's who Rizzo is. Because Rizzo knows when he has to go on the defensive, that's the type of stuff he does. He's always done that. And I'm used to it for the last 10, 15 years, however long he's been here. So
Number one, Soto.
Yeah, it's easily, and no one really touches it because, once again, we don't win a lot around here, and we traded our young champion, and it was ugly. It wasn't hey, we're warning you here. We do have to restock.
Right. Or it wasn't Soto going, I just don't want to be here.
I
don't want to be on a bad team.
Yeah, there was no,
He didn't do that.
Yeah. And
in fact, he seemed surprised that it ramped up to 11. And then the post-interviews was his family was just take the money from them. Just take the money from them, which is what I was saying to him. Just take the money, man. They're giving it to you now. Just take it.
And to just run through it, the Caps haven't really made any back-breaking trades.
No.
They've moved guys here and there. The Caps one always burns me when they have to trade the guy that doesn't fit here because they're keeping the core together. The Johansson trade, the Burakovsky trade, the Vrana trade. The guys that are actually a top 6 forward, but they could never re-sign them anyways. That guy that constantly gets traded always irks me, but I understand why they had to do it every time.
They haven't traded the prominent players.
Correct.
Correct.
And so that doesn't touch it. The Brad trade
should have recently, but they haven't. Yeah.
The Brad trade never bothered me. I wanted him gone regardless. He's just never moved the needle for me. The Wizards trades in general have never been that hard.
The Wall one was tough, but it had to be done.
Correct. The Wall one.
The Wall one's tough because I loved him, but he had an injury that he was never going to recover from, and they couldn't pay him that money anymore. And they found somebody to take him. They had to make this deal.
The Wall.
There was no. So that one, it hurt to say goodbye to him, but I knew they had to do it.
The Wall one falls in the same category as when they had to blow up the Gilbert team. When Gilbert got traded for Rashard Lewis to Orlando, it was just a sad day. Then they traded Antoine Jameson to the Cavs when the Cavs were your rival the whole entire time. That was tough. And then they also, this one worked out a little bit better. They moved Caron Butler, Deshaun Stevenson, and Brendan Haywood to Dallas. And that's the year Dallas won the title.
That's
you kind of felt good, at least at the end of that season, that those 3 guys all won rings for that trade. But it's the same feeling as the Wall trade, where you're kind of like, man, we really like all those dudes, and blowing it up hurts. Because it's an acknowledgement of failure that you couldn't get it done with them. Other than that, I'm trying to think of one for the Redskins or the Commanders that kind of hurts, but I feel like every single one slowly escalated to a bubbling point that we were so used to it or ready for it to happen that when it did, it was like, thank God that's over.
Well, the one that should have happened was Kirk, and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
They let him walk.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. I guess the day they cut...
That is an all-time mismanagement, that they let a franchise quarterback walk for nothing.
Yeah, I guess the day RG3 was, I forget if they traded or they let him go or his contract. Yeah, that one kind of hurt because you saw the hope for the first year. But once again, things had deteriorated so much over 3 years.
Same like Chase, there was an injury.
Yeah.
There was a lot of injury things. He was literally not going to be able to be
I'll give you one that kind of hurt with the then Redskins. It didn't escalate, but it hurt a little bit because of the way the season finished out. Is after they won that playoff game in 2005, the last playoff game they won, they just let LeVar walk. And he signed with the Giants.
Yeah.
And that one, just as a kid, was kind of like, ooh, don't like that because he had actually been, remember,
not unlike Chase a little bit. He never kind of lived up to the potential that you had hoped.
Right,
he was a good player, not great player. He was supposed to be franchise altering. He never was part of that answer.
If you remember, though, he didn't start, and then there were injuries, and he made that play in the Tampa game to put him in for a touchdown. Like, it kind of just felt like, oh, well, the rest of the team's clicking. Maybe he's clicking now. And then to see him walk for nothing, that would hurt a little bit, but there's really not one for them in my era that I can think of that
Trent was tough.
Trent, absolutely, but same thing. It had escalated to a point where they were, he wasn't suiting up. They were then shopping him. They were just looking for a resolution at that point.
Well, he had basically asked to go, and he trashed the organization for their care of him. So, I mean, I don't know what Ron was supposed to do at this point.
Correct.
I know people yell at him because they were like, he wasn't there. I'm like,
that wasn't Ron's battle.
Well, I was
honestly.
like, it's a blank slate. Let's just figure it out. And then it doesn't sound like they ever got to the blank slate.
Exactly.
I mean, there's too many hard feelings. He needed to go on, unfortunately. All right, you mentioned the Capitals. We'll talk about Nick Backstrom next. Brad Washington Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Hi, everyone. Today, Nick Backstrom announced to the Capitals that he's stepping away from hockey because his physical health is not up to the standard he needs it to be to continue playing for now.
Yeah.
The team is saying all the right things about supporting him. I saw a couple of interviews and a couple clips with Alex Ovechkin, TJ Oshie, others like that, being supportive about it. There was a quote from Backstrom. There was a quote in a release from the GM basically saying, we'll support him. We understand why he's doing this.
Yep.
This is unfortunately predictable and inevitable. He injured his hip pretty badly. He had an unusual procedure done in Europe called a hip resurfacing. I don't believe anyone's come back and played with this thing for any length of time.
In tennis, there has been.
Yeah.
So
he would have been
Federer that's had it. Someone major has had it and came back.
Yeah, but in this sport, no one had done that. The initial kind of early reviews in the summer where he looked okay.
Yeah.
And then he got a little testy with people and said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And then here we are, 8 games in or whatever, and he can't go. So, earlier in the offseason, I think the team was trying to prod him to retire. I don't know how that helps them on their cap. If he does, because he is owed some money.
So I do know this. At least on this year, they're going to put him on IR first, just normal IR.
Yeah.
There's incentive to do that. I forget kind of what you can do to circumvent some numbers on that, but he's going to be on normal IR for the time being.
I think you can get some cap room back if he goes on an IR where he doesn't return.
So it's a long-term IR. Once he gets put on that, then you get his $9.2 million cap hit back. So
it would give them room if they wanted to do something.
I mean, that's a major move, man. Like, that's $9 million is a lot of money in the NHL. So once he goes to LTIR, that's when you could watch out and see if they make a splash or try to do something. If not, they might not do that and just bank that cap space and, try to do something next year or whatever that is. When it comes to him actually playing, though, I had felt this way all summer long. Once the tune had changed with McClellan, because remember he had mentioned they needed to have a discussion, and then he kind of backed off of it when he was available for the media.
Mm-hmm.
I got the sense all along that they were going to let him have the shot, because I said this about Wilson. It's different when you have a major surgery and then you're trying to rush back and get into the season. You don't have a whole off season to train like you normally would and have a normal day-to-day life, and you're not constantly trying to catch up and then just get put right into the lineup. So once I saw they were going to let him come back, preseason he looked okay. I'm not going to say he looked amazing, but he looked like he could play a little bit. The thing with Backstrom is he's never lost his hands. And so that's what's been tough to judge with him is he can still make a pass better than anyone on the team. The problem is when they get into some of these skate races with a younger team, he looks legitimately out of place. I mean, he looks like a guy that doesn't belong.
He can't move.
That's what sucks the most, because when they're on the power play and he's dishing it, it looks great. Right. I mean, that's one thing he can do. But I'm kind of more.
Hockey's not a game where someone can post up.
Correct, and I'm actually just more surprised it happened this fast. Like, I kind of felt like if this was going to happen, he was going to give it a go for like 20 games, something like that, maybe even halfway through the year. I'm actually it's just sad that it's only taken this many games for him to at least say, I need to step away for a minute to see if this is what I want to do or whatever the decision is. So, he's going to go up in the rafters. 19 is going to be retired. It sucks because you just kind of saw this coming eventually. I just didn't think it would happen like this.
It was inevitable. I mean, I was secretly hoping he would retire before the season to allow them to move
To
forward.
make a move, yeah, sure.
Kind of knowing that this was going to be a long shot at best.
Right.
And if he did this, procedure just for quality of life, it's great.
Sure.
Just for quality of life.
I think everyone's rooting for that number one more than anything.
Yeah. But he gave it a shot. It's hard to walk away from this stuff. I get it. I've interacted with a lot of high-level athletes through the years, and I understand. It's hard to walk away from this. And he gave it a shot, and I'm assuming this will lead to retirement. I will be surprised if he comes back. I mean, this is now second time that we've had with Strasburg. We're still waiting for him to retire.
Sure, but it's in the last month.
Didn't happen.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Somehow,
That's 2 months,
somehow didn't happen, but,
With Backstrom, too, hockey's a little bit different, I think, than other sports. When you sign a contract like that, you want to fulfill it, and you want it to be worth it. And then there's kind of more of a sense of pride in the NHL, I feel, when you sign a deal like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a part of this as well. He didn't want to be the guy that signed the fat deal and then couldn't live up to it. There's something to be said about that. There's a little more care when it comes to the NHL and those types of things. And I also think, let's be honest here, too. However many assists he's had on number 8's goals, I think he really wanted to be out there when he breaks the record, whether he was on the third or fourth line or whatever, there's a part of him that probably was thinking, I want to be there because that was the whole point. They matched their contracts to line up at the same time, and that's not going to happen. So I totally get why he was trying this.
It'll be like Key and Peele when Jordan Peele won the Oscar and he's just standing in the back cheering for him.
Right. Yeah,
we can do that.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. We'll be right back. Josh McDaniels gets ousted in Las Vegas. 2 years, actually a year and a half into a 6-year contract.
Least shocking news ever, honestly.
That's amazing. We'll be right back. Very much show ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Did you have fun last night?
I went to ZZ Top for Halloween, Michael.
That'd
be an amazing costume for him.
Pretty good one. Gets a fake beard.
Cal and I both went to see the Hives last night.
That was an awesome show.
Stage. That was fun.
That was an awesome show.
Yeah, they're very energetic. Small space. I like concerts in small spaces, especially bands like that. They're loud.
Yep.
The lead singer's got a lot of good stage presence.
He's fantastic.
He's very good. Yes, he looks like a very drunk nephew of Mick Jagger.
That's about right.
Yeah.
I'd use another drug.
Sounds like him a little bit.
I'd use another drug to describe him.
Maybe.
But
yeah. So it was fun. It was fun. It was fun Halloween night. Before that, I went trick or treating. My son is master class in our neighborhood now.
In terms of what?
Like in a very short period of time, maximizing the candy accumulation. He knows exactly which house to go to, exactly which ones not to go to, and then in my neighborhood, on our side of our neighborhood is not where all the kids go. The other side is where all the kids run, but he likes this because he knows he's gamed this up.
That's right.
That because so few kids show up to these houses.
Handfuls.
Pour it in, baby.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm talking half a pillowcase full of candy. I'm saying, like, if I put my foot down and said you could have 2 pieces of this for the every day, it would take till next Halloween for him to get through the whole thing. So he came back as if he had robbed a bank. He was just like, he just knew what he had done, felt very proud of himself. And it was a master class because I'm walking to make sure they're not attacked.
Yeah, right.
And because they're 10. So I'm walking around with all the boys and he's pointing out, he's like, not that one. And then pointing over to another house, he maximized his time and accumulation. It was a total master class. I was very proud.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Future entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What was his costume again?
He went as a teddy bear. I don't know.
Just feel like
it was funny.
Keep asking you.
Well, it was one of those things. It was funny. It was like, it's very cute at this age. In 10 years, it's creepy.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
It's creepy, or it's weird, or he's
10,
either
try 5.
yeah. When he's 16, if he's wearing the same outfit, he's either
got questions.
Pervert, or he's just a good time. It could be that.
Right.
The guy who's known as the good time who wears that is known as the good time.
Yeah,
it's a tough costume to pull off as an adult, though.
On costumes, I was very happy to see that a lot of people were dressed up at the show yesterday. I was a little worried that it would be
the two you liked were a very large man dressed as a dinosaur.
Yes, correct, exactly.
So you've got to walk around him.
You have to walk around him, and then his friend, or at least the guy standing next to him, was a traffic cone.
So you have to walk around that too.
So you have to walk around him as well.
That's a good concert.
That was a great bit. A great bit for them.
I like Union Stage, guys. Nice place.
You didn't even, like,
that was the first time I'd seen a show there. It was great.
Get there early enough next time. Get their pizza. Their pizza's awesome.
Oh,
so
yeah?
They just do like a personal bar pizza, and they'll throw it right out at you. So
I
it's
mean, one
fantastic.
flaw, they got this giant pole in the middle of the area where
it's the
people
column.
stand.
Yeah,
this
it's the
column
column.
sucks.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I had a great time. I loved it.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely, lovely time, guys.
It's a good little venue that's not 9:30 is pretty much what I say.
Yeah.
It's not it's not 9:30, but the vibes are right. And if you're walking by it, you would never know it's a music venue either. That's what I like. It's kind of this cool, kitschy little, literal underground space. So I like it a lot.
Ron Rivera is speaking with the media. He hasn't said anything contentious or controversial or newsworthy, actually. He's just talking about what happened yesterday. And we'll play it for you in Commander's Daily today. And if he does say anything that's overly newsworthy or contentious, maybe we'll replay that clip for you, in the next hour or so before we get to Commander's Daily.
The one quote I'll say here is he was asked about Josh Harris and how involved he was, and it was kind of like, I don't know if I believe him, because he says Harris liked the ideas. He agreed with the ideas. We were all aligned, everything from coaching to personnel to Mr. Harris with what went out, and the front office did the deals they did yesterday. I just don't know if I believe Ron in that he believed in trading two guys in a lame duck year, essentially, for him. So
right.
That's all.
It's a little...
He's saying what he needs to say, which,
Yeah.
good job, Ron. Sometimes you don't do that.
Josh Harris, by the way, doesn't do interviews anymore. I don't know if you've noticed that lately.
Obviously.
He took the honeymoon. He did the circuit,
Sure.
kissed a lot of babies, bought some beers, did a bunch of, did some faux handshakes with Troy or Joe. And then now he's back in the background where we expected him, honestly, to be.
Right.
So we'll see, as this plays out. Let's see.
Right.
Ron did say, I heard him say something to the effect of, we had to do this in 2014. And he goes, we put a bunch of young guys out there and we ended up making the playoffs that year. They are 3-5. Mm-hmm. They are playing a 2-6 team this weekend.
Right.
I've heard, I kind of said this yesterday, will their defense be collectively better off of these changes? In the short term, maybe, partially because they couldn't be worse.
Right.
The bar's very low.
Yeah.
Do I buy that even if they are structurally better with Tuhill, Smith-Williams, F.A. Abada, maybe the rookies get some opportunities, like Andre Jones get some opportunities. Do I buy that over 17 games they're better? I do not. I still believe talent wins, and I think those two guys happen to be more talented than those other people.
Sure.
So automatically replacing them, in the short term, could it jolt the defense to be a little better than it's been? Maybe, less unpredictable? Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
I'll buy that. Over 17 games, often it's the teams that have Pro Bowl caliber players that end up winning.
Right.
And we got rid of 2 Pro Bowl caliber players yesterday. So I will not turn the page and try to be some kind of optimist that, they're going to be better without them. I don't necessarily believe that.
Yeah.
I think maybe short term they are, but I am not I like Casey Tuhill. He's great. But he ain't Montez Sweat.
Right.
Don't kid yourself. He's not.
You will like this, actually. He was asked about the Chase Young freelancing bit, and he said, if you're not going to put your name on it, don't put it out. It's not palatable. As in,
he said that.
Yeah.
Great.
So he's
with me on this.
Yeah, he's even putting his foot down and going,
Shut up.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Shut up.
Yep.
Well, I didn't like it either. I thought that was really...
It was honestly out of character for this group, too. I don't know where that came from, but...
I don't either.
Yeah,
right, again, those quotes, they came from real people. I believe Ben got a real quote from a real person about that. I believe Mike Silver did, too.
Yeah.
But I was really put off by that.
Sure.
Are you kidding right now?
Right.
He was not a bad player. He was not a bad person. He was not a locker room cancer. His teammates really liked him. He was a megastar that we were building a franchise around. It didn't work out. This is big-time sports. It happens. Unfortunately, they traded him yesterday. You do not need to slander him on the way out the door. I didn't think he deserved it. Yeah. And that's why I was plus, guys, you haven't been in any Super Bowls lately, so I don't know where you get off, trying to, cast off somebody and be like he's the problem.
Yeah. And
get out of here.
And it's funny because, we mentioned it yesterday just because of the personnel moves. They cut William Jackson so fast or traded William Jackson so fast. That would have been a player you could have kicked on the way out just to explain what happened.
I did a little bit on him.
Right, but
because I didn't like the way he was acting.
Right, but they never did that with him is what I'm getting at.
No, they
here.
didn't.
So that's why I didn't understand of like,
that was also their decision to give him a lot of money.
Sure, but they still traded him and could have said something on the way out.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And what I'm getting at is if they didn't
I don't even think he's playing for anybody anymore.
Yeah, I think he's a free agent.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at there, though, is like that's a guy that would have deserved it maybe a little bit if you wanted to, but you didn't, and then you said it to Chase. So.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's like him and Wentz are the only two big swings they've had. If you really think about it.
Yeah.
Him and Chase are the only, and Wentz, they're only two big swings they've taken in 4 years. Like Logan Thomas, bargain, hit. J.D. McKissick, bargain, hit till he got hurt.
Yeah.
Cody Barton, we'll see. Sure. Nick Gates has not worked out.
Right.
Bargain, though. Andrew Wiley, I don't think has really worked out, but it's a bargain play. Yeah. Like, again, you get what you pay for here. Like, they didn't try to get a Pro Bowler. They paid for somebody who's at that tier level. Like, Curtis Samuel, missed the whole year.
Mixed bag. I would say mixed bag. I wouldn't say it's the worst.
When he's played the last year and a half, it's about what I expected. Like, he's not going to lead the team in receptions, but he's got a lot of moments in games, and he's versatile. And I think he's been that for them. Sure. Is he overpaid for that type of role? Well, now that they, drafted Jahan Dotson, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If he was just their number 2, no. But like, so I'd go mixed bag. Unfortunately, the first year was lost, but the last 2 have been about exactly what I thought. He'd probably have more targets if they didn't have Dotson on the team. He'd be the number 2 receiver, but like that's not what they did. Other than that, I mean, they've only taken 2 real big swings here. William Jackson, which was a failure, and Wentz, which I understand why they did it. It was a failure only by trade value. I don't care about the money. Like,
yeah, right.
He fit under the cap that year. It didn't cost them anybody. They didn't lose anybody over it. They didn't cut anybody over it. There was no guarantee on the other side. So there was no dead cap. There was no cost to the roster because of it. So to me, it was you lost a couple draft picks. You took a shot on somebody. Yeah, it's a miss, but like it's not a devastating miss.
Right.
William Jackson, there was dead cap money attached to it. It's gone now, but there was. They had to eat it on him.
With Wentz too, the best part about that deal, I remember the day they made it because you and I had talked about it, and I had mentioned I liked the Wentz. I liked them getting Wentz only because they could cut him after.
Because there's an out.
There was an out. Like that was
the whole time. It was like there's an out,
it.
and thankfully they didn't do anything about that.
Right. Yes.
They wisely did not alter his contract and make him play it out. And then they had an out and they used it,
Right.
But outside of that, there haven't been many big swings. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. This offseason they couldn't because there was no authority to do anything.
There is one blurb here that is being tweeted out that Eugene Shen, the analytics guy that just got hired, did help them make the trade decisions yesterday by explaining the value of the trades made. So.
Okay. That's what he's there to do.
That's what I suspected yesterday.
That's what he
screamed of a little bit of a new wrinkle.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I know anything like this is happening, but I think it is clear as day that like somebody's advising the new ownership group. Mm-hmm. It'd be ridiculous to think that they're not.
That's right. Right. Exactly.
Ridiculous to think that they're not.
Good. Right.
Like, Josh Harris is on board with all this. Yeah, because he doesn't study the salary cap or know football personnel or know if Jalen Johnson should be acquired in the Montez sweat trade. Like, he doesn't know that, and he'll tell you that he doesn't know that.
Right, exactly.
All right, let's talk about Josh McDaniels, your boy, for a minute.
Least shocking news ever, guys.
So they lose on Monday night at America's team, so big surprise.
Yeah.
They've had some weird defeats. I think that I've said this for a couple of years, they do weird deals. I mean, across the board. They're like the Bears. They do a lot of weird deals that may or may not work out and largely just haven't worked out for them. He also comes off as a crazy pants. Mm-hmm. I mean, you go get Devontae Adams, who wants to play for you, with his best friend. Then you extend his best friend and then get rid of him.
Right.
And they cut him, right? They didn't even...
Correct. Yeah,
they ended up cutting him.
Yeah, they cut him, and because he got a no trade clause, so he could.
So he's just like, forget it.
Yeah, right.
So they lost Derek Carr for nothing.
Right.
After they extended him because they got his best friend.
Right.
Pissed off the receiver by getting rid of him.
Who they traded for a first and second round pick, by the way.
That's
what they traded for him.
All the reporting is Carr and McDaniels were fighting every day.
Yep.
Arguing. So they couldn't live with each other. Yeah. So much so that at the end of the year, they went, we need to not be near each other.
Right. Correct.
Then led to, are they going to trade him? And Carr, almost out of spite, was like, "You're going to cut me.
Yeah, right.
Deal with it."
Right, because he
And
was
probably told the Saints, "I'll sign with you. Just give it a minute."
Yeah, because he was doing the thing of, why would I go to a team and make them give up assets for me when it's ultimately going to make the team worse?
Yeah.
Like,
right. Why would I do that?
Right.
So that happened. They go and get Garoppolo then, which is a weird answer because you're paying him now the same amount you were paying Carr after you gave him an extension and after he's been kind of run out mainly because of injuries, really, with Garoppolo the last couple of years.
Mainly because you're running it down. Let me go to Bill Barnwell's piece because he did a literal chronological order of what happened.
Oh, it's
and how it
unbelievable.
happened.
Yeah.
And so the first thing he did was he's calling it fool's gold, that he got the 10-17 from Bisaccia that everyone.
That's right.
Everyone wanted Bisaccia to come back too, by the way. But he said they basically went like, I forget what it was. They won like 7 or 8 games in 1-score games. So they got lucky with that record.
This is every year there's a couple teams. The Vikings were that last year.
Right.
The Giants were that last year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the first
Where it's
decision.
like average team that won a lot of close games. Good on them. But that's what happened.
And they won 3 games against Nick Mullins, Drew Lock, and Carson Wentz after he came off the COVID list. So 3 really fool's gold type.
So the schedule lined up for them. They hit the right team at the right time. And they barely won those games, but they won them.
Right. So when they inherited
They almost won that playoff game, though. Remember?
Right.
They went to Cincinnati.
4th and goal.
Almost.
4th and goal.
They almost won that playoff game.
Yeah, he threw a pick on 4th and goal, Carr did. So they were 10-7. So he said basically McDaniels didn't evaluate the roster. He just thought he was inheriting a playoff roster. But if you looked in the nitty-gritty, Mayock didn't draft well. They weren't young. They were getting older. So the first move they did was, like we just discussed, Adams. They traded a 1st and a 2nd round pick on a team they needed to get younger on.
Right. But it's hard to. Adams is a top 5 receiver.
Okay.
He's incredible.
Either way, though.
Like, that's not a bad pickup. Like, he's incredible.
Then, after that, they signed Chandler Jones to a 3-year, $51 million deal, which was terrible.
Way too late. Yes.
Which also
his best years were behind him.
Which they also remember they had both Crosby and Ngakoue.
Right.
And they had to trade him to who did he go to? The Colts.
Ngakoue's been running around.
He went to the Colts though, but they had to trade an edge rusher when they signed a 32-year-old edge rusher. Okay.
That's right.
Then they signed the, in air quotes, extension for Carr. That was 3 years, but really they had a 1 year out essentially with them.
Yeah.
Then they got nothing out of the 2022 draft, the first draft that they had. They drafted a running back. They drafted Zamir White, who didn't play because they had Josh Jacobs. So what was the point of that? After that, they then declined Jacobs' 5th-year option, which ended up biting him in the ass this year because he was one of the best running backs in football last year.
And they had to give him something to make him happy.
Right.
They're lucky he's still there.
Then,
but it's also, he had nowhere to go because nobody wants to pay the running backs.
Right.
Jonathan Taylor's still with Indianapolis. Same thing, because nobody wants to pay the running backs.
Then they signed Hunter Renfrow to a 2-year, $32 million deal, and he had 330 yards last year.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know. It's bad.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Then, oh my God, they signed Waller to a 3-year, $51 million extension, traded him this past year with 2 years left on his deal.
Right.
Okay. Then after that, they signed Garoppolo, as you were just getting into. And Mistake, exactly.
They should have just gone younger.
Didn't draft well again. They traded up 4 different times in this year's draft in 2023.
Traded up?
Yeah, they traded up
to get what?
Michael Mayer, Jacorian Bennett, Aiden O'Connell, and Christopher Smith. Those are the 4 players they traded up to get.
None of which, I know one's a quarterback. The other 3 I couldn't even name who they are.
Yeah, I don't know. And then they got Tyree Wilson with the number 7 overall pick. They did not move up.
He looks good.
There. They stood pat there.
He looks good, and across from Crosby, he could be nasty.
He has only played, Barnwell references it though, he's only played in 41% of their snaps this season.
Wonder why that is.
No idea.
That's weird.
Yeah. So basically, that's what he's saying. Every single decision, though, has just been bad. They should have probably tried to tear it down first when they got there, then try to go with all these veterans.
They fired him a year and a half into a 6-year contract.
We all knew it wasn't going to work either, too. Like, we're like, why are you giving this guy a chance?
Why?
We all knew it wasn't going to work.
They could have had Bisaccia as the lowest paid coach in the league.
With no expectations, too, by the way.
No expectations.
And if you fire him, all the players go, we gave it a shot.
But you know what? Carr's pretty good. And,
Carr honestly
was not bad.
Carr was going to mask a bunch of your deficiencies because at least Carr was yelling out, rah, rah, I'm a Raider for life.
Yeah.
You know how this works.
Yeah.
If you're losing with that guy, you're kind of like, he's ours, though. Like, He's Ryan Zimmerman. You're like,
look, I mean, and frankly, like now you know what you know. Like the Chargers are not reliable.
yep, right.
And Denver's been a S show for 7 years.
Yeah.
They could, if just with some stability and
right.
Carr, be the second place team in that division, which has got you right on the playoffs every year.
Correct.
You're just kind of right there. And if you upset them once a year, you're probably in. You split with them. Like they with Gruden, they split with them a couple times.
Right.
You know, like so they're kind of right. It's a division game, so they're kind of right there. Yeah, they're a mess. I wonder what they're going to do next.
Barnwell pretty much writes here they need to tear it down because Crosby only has 3 years left on his deal. This rebuild's probably going to take longer, and then if you have to re-sign him, he's going to be probably past his prime.
I would not move him now.
He's saying he's making the argument that he's going to
should be bad, just be terrible.
Well, he's making the argument that Crosby will get you a first-round pick plus. That's what he's saying.
Undoubtedly.
So
now.
That's what he's saying is that you you make that deal to reset your draft.
This is the point about Sweat or Young. They're not him.
Yep. Right.
They're not Myles Garrett. They're not him. They're very good players. That guy is a top 5 game-changing player.
He's also saying he has a very desirable contract. He only has 3 years. It's only worth $61 million for a premier pass rusher.
And you're not even paying all of that because whatever the signing bonus was gets eaten by the Raiders.
Right. Bosa's getting $34 million a year, so he's saying you'll have teams line up
because it'll be a first-round plus
because of the deal. Basically,
you'll get a first and a third for him
easily. So
a contender would probably pay a first and a third because they're not going to get somebody clearly better. And that dude, he's a monster.
Right.
Like you want to see a defensive end who kills people. He's one of them.
And a good
that
salary.
dude in Detroit is a monster too.
Right.
Hutchinson.
Oh yeah, Hutchinson's awesome. Yeah. But
Jacksonville's a very good team. That was a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Choosing Walker over him.
Yeah, I agree.
That guy's a monster. This is the difference between, we hope Chase Young was going to be this, and you pie in the sky hope that Sweat would become this, but he was a first round pick. They didn't ascend to that.
Right.
They're both very good players, but they were never that. They were never Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, Bosa, Micah Parsons. Where game to game to game, they're making 3 to 5 plays that flip a game upside down.
Yep.
Like they were never doing that.
Right. So Barnwell's basically arguing Crosby isn't going to be on a good team anytime soon. He has a desirable contract. You flip him. You could probably flip Adams for a good price too if you wanted to do that. So, yeah, tough world out there in Vegas for the Raiders.
So, who's going to be their next coach? Who's going to be their next GM?
The GM that they are putting the interim tag on, I forget who it is. They were saying is highly regarded. Like he's interviewed for jobs before, so there is
Champ
a shot.
Kelly?
Yeah.
What a great name.
Yeah.
Champ Kelly.
He's gotten interviews with other teams.
Wasn't he an anchor man with
That's Champ Kind.
Oh, all right.
That's Champ Kind. But
and our guy Antonio Pierce is now the interim head coach,
which is weird because he's the linebackers coach, and he got in trouble with the NCAA last year that made him resign for Arizona
He was on
State,
Herm's staff.
Arizona State staff. So
Herm's staff.
That's a little
Herm's
weird.
staff got in trouble.
Interim coach, who cares? Like, give him a shot. I don't care.
Good transition. I want to talk about college football because your boy Harbaugh. I bet you he's calling
Raiders head coach.
I bet she's calling him. I bet she's calling here too.
Oh God.
Because they got to do something soon.
Jim and John Harbaugh own the DMV.
Move
the Harbaugh parents here.
I will put that at a 0.1% chance that he's the head coach here. 0.1%.
What about Dabo?
Do you think Jim Harbaugh is the data analytics coach of the future?
God, no.
Right.
Complete opposite.
So
rub some dirt on it.
0.1%. He comes, especially when he also tells them he wants $20 million a year.
We heard the players bitch about Bieniemy.
Yeah.
We'll hear right away with this guy.
Who's got it better than us? Everyone else.
Everyone else.
All right.